The Motivator Show. The internet's most inspirational podcast. Every Saturday morning from 8 to 10 a.m. Anthony Brown's story. In the summer of 1982, Anthony Brown, then 21, was hoping for an acceptance letter for a place to study law in London. He'd worked hard for his A-levels in computing, maths, physics at North Trafford College in Manchester and was full of energy and idealism. Instead, he received a letter from the Home Office telling him he was in the UK illegally and needed to report to Manchester Airport for deportation. Brown, who was born in Jamaica but moved to England as aged 6 years old in 1967, had been classified as an immigration offender. Anthony Brown's story. Many people in Brown's position were repatriated, but his case was taken up by a group of campaigners who were determined to prevent his removal from the United Kingdom, launching what became known as the Anthony Brown Anti-Deportation Campaign. Professor Gus John, then a community activist and now an academic and an equalities campaigner, helped coordinate it. Professor Gus John said, "The system was barbaric." Professor Gus John, he said, "I had declined the 2000 New Year's Honours List award." He said, "Because everything I've done in my life in this country since 1964 has been in the struggle for racial equality and social justice. One of the major impediments to promoting racial equality is the legacy of empire. I believe the whole thing is iniquitous. People think I am being cheerless campaigning against the empire, but I am struggling to end the injustice and inequality that the whole damn thing is built upon." At a recent lecture, he noted, "All empires sustain themselves and expand through barbarism, and the British Empire is no exception. Imperialism and colonialism serves to define the nation and its people's view of themselves and their place in the world. It was a crucible, therefore, in which racism is constructed." The 1948 British Nationality Act, 6C56, it was an act of Parliament of the United Kingdom on British nationality law, which defined British nationality by creating the status of citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies, CUKC, as the sole national citizenship of the United Kingdom and all of its colonies. It gave people from colonies the right to live and work in Britain. The government needed workers to help fill post-war labour shortages and rebuild the economy. Caribbean countries were also struggling economically, and job vacancies in UK offered an opportunity for all. Anthony Brown says, "We're calling for a Windrush Act. There comes a point where we need to stop just putting people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in." Desmond Tutu. Anthony Brown says, "We're calling for a Windrush Act." The then Prime Minister Theresa May apologised to the Caribbean heads of government for the treatment of Windrush citizens and promised that no one would be deported. The then Prime Minister told the meeting with Caribbean leaders she wanted to dispel any impression that her government was, in some case, clamping down on Commonwealth citizens, particularly those from the Caribbean. "I'd taken this issue very seriously," the Home Secretary apologised in the House of Commons yesterday for any anxiety caused. "And I want to apologise to you today because we are genuinely sorry for any anxiety that has been caused," she said.
On Tuesday, I met with Caribbean leaders, where I gave an absolute commitment that the UK government will do whatever it takes, including where appropriate payment of compensation, to resolve the anxieties and problems which some of the Windrush generation have suffered. These people are British, they are part of us, they helped to build Britain, and we are all the stronger for their contributions.
Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. The Windrush Act will have at its core a recognition, apology, reparations, restitutions, remembering. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. Recognition by the United Kingdom that its past actions have unfairly impacted on peoples of African Caribbean descent, both living in the UK and in its former colonies. It is a recognition that this impact has consequences across all aspects of people's lives: citizenship, community cohesion, education, criminal justice, work, health. The Windrush Act places the duty on public bodies to reduce race disparity for outcomes in their work, as exposed by the government's own race disparities audit. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. Apology for the wrongs that were done historically by the United Kingdom to people of African Caribbean descent. These wrongs are clearly defined in the Wendy Williams Lessons Learned Review, and it is to the righting of these wrongs that the Windrush Act is addressed. This is not to say that there are not similar wrongs done to other cohorts of people that needs to be addressed by similar legislation. This apology is enacted in law so that it is clearly an apology from the nation, rather from some here today, gone tomorrow politician. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. Reparation for past wrongs. The reparation that it seeks is to work with those who are today living with the consequences of those past wrongs. It is reparation that go beyond mere financial compensation to individuals, but instead provides resources to affected people and communities to support them in what they want to do with their lives. To this end, the Windrush Act will establish a Commonwealth Community Cohesion Fund for the development of projects in the UK and the Commonwealth to tackle disparities and to rebuild social and economic ties of communities damaged by the Windrush scandal and other historic unfair actions negatively impacting on this cohort. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. Restitution. Since 1948, the citizenship of those who arrived on the Windrush and that of their descendants has been repeatedly eroded, particularly by the 1971 Immigration Act and by the current hostile environment. This erosion leaves many within the African and Caribbean cohort finding themselves British in all but name, and therefore having to prove their Britishness when it was Britain that eroded and undermined their Britishness in the first place. The Windrush Act fully restores the Britishness of this cohort. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. Remembering. To this day, the United Kingdom prefers to tell the story about its colonial past that is often unrecognisable to those who lived that past. Only by telling a more honest story about its colonial past can the country show that its citizens of colonial descents are as worthy citizens as any other. The Windrush Act holds the state and its education system to do this more honest telling. The Windrush Act remembers what Great Britain meant to those pioneering men and women who saw the country a set of ideals and values that led them to board the SS Windrush in 1948. Anthony Brown says, "We're calling for a Windrush Act." Do I qualify for Windrush? You can apply if one of the following is true. You came to the United Kingdom from a Commonwealth country before 1973. Your parents or grandparents came to the United Kingdom from a Commonwealth country before 1973. You came to the United Kingdom from any country before the 31st of December 1988 and are now settled here. Anthony Brown says, "We're calling for a Windrush Act." Remember, actions speak louder than words. The time for action is now. Translate our words into action. Contact WD Legal. Website www.wdlegal.co.uk. Together, we will make the difference. The Motivator Show. Success is ours for the taking. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's free. Press the like button and don't forget to leave a comment. Follow us on Facebook. Give us the thumbs up and share with your family and friends. We are also on Instagram and TikTok. Follow us there too. You can listen to us on galaxy.net and also Mixcloud too. The Motivator Show. The internet's most inspirational podcast. Every Saturday morning from 8 to 10 a.m. Anthony Brown's story. In the summer of 1982, Anthony Brown, then 21, was hoping for an acceptance letter for a place to study law in London. He'd worked hard for his A-levels in computing, maths, physics at North Trafford College in Manchester and was full of energy and idealism. Instead, he received a letter from the Home Office telling him he was in the UK illegally and needed to report to Manchester Airport for deportation. Brown, who was born in Jamaica but moved to England as aged 6 years old in 1967, had been classified as an immigration offender. Anthony Brown's story. Many people in Brown's position were repatriated, but his case was taken up by a group of campaigners who were determined to prevent his removal from the United Kingdom, launching what became known as the Anthony Brown Anti-Deportation Campaign. Professor Gus John, then a community activist and now an academic and an equalities campaigner, helped coordinate it. Professor Gus John said the system was barbaric. Professor Gus John, he said, I had declined the 2000 New Year's Honours List award. He said because everything I've done in my life in this country since 1964 has been in the struggle for racial equality and social justice. One of the major impediments to promoting racial equality is the legacy of empire. I believe the whole thing is iniquitous. People think I am being cheerless campaigning against the empire, but I am struggling to end the injustice and inequality that the whole damn thing is built upon. At a recent lecture, he noted, all empires sustain themselves and expand through barbarism, and the British Empire is no exception. Imperialism and colonialism serves to define the nation and its people's view of themselves and their place in the world. It was a crucible, therefore, in which racism is constructed. The 1948 British Nationality Act, 6C56, it was an act of Parliament of the United Kingdom on British nationality law, which defined British nationality by creating the status of citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies, CUKC, as the sole national citizenship of the United Kingdom and all of its colonies. It gave people from colonies the right to live and work in Britain. The government needed workers to help fill post-war labour shortages and rebuild the economy. Caribbean countries were also struggling economically, and job vacancies in UK offered an opportunity for all. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. There comes a point where we need to stop just putting people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in. Desmond Tutu. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. The then Prime Minister Theresa May apologised to the Caribbean heads of government for the treatment of Windrush citizens and promised that no one would be deported. The then Prime Minister told the meeting with Caribbean leaders she wanted to dispel any impression that her government was, in some case, clamping down on Commonwealth citizens, particularly those from the Caribbean. I'd taken this issue very seriously. The Home Secretary apologised in the House of Commons yesterday for any anxiety caused. And I want to apologise to you today because we are genuinely sorry for any anxiety that has been caused, she said.
On Tuesday, I met with Caribbean leaders, where I gave an absolute commitment that the UK government will do whatever it takes, including where appropriate payment of compensation, to resolve the anxieties and problems which some of the Windrush generation have suffered. These people are British, they are part of us, they helped to build Britain, and we are all the stronger for their contributions.
Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. The Windrush Act will have at its core a recognition, apology, reparations, restitutions, remembering. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. Recognition by the United Kingdom that its past actions have unfairly impacted on peoples of African Caribbean descent, both living in the UK and in its former colonies. It is a recognition that this impact has consequences across all aspects of people's lives: citizenship, community cohesion, education, criminal justice, work, health. The Windrush Act places the duty on public bodies to reduce race disparity for outcomes in their work, as exposed by the government's own race disparities audit. Anthony Brown says, "We're calling for a Windrush Act apology for the wrongs that were done historically by the United Kingdom to people of African Caribbean descent. These wrongs are clearly defined in the Wendy Williams Lessons Learned Review, and it is to the righting of these wrongs that the Windrush Act is addressed. This is not to say that there are not similar wrongs done to other cohorts of people that needs to be addressed by similar legislation. This apology is enacted in law so that it is clearly an apology from the nation, rather from some here today, gone tomorrow politician." Anthony Brown says, "We're calling for a Windrush Act. Reparation for past wrongs. The reparation that it seeks is the work of those who are today living with the consequences of those past wrongs. It is reparation that go beyond mere financial compensation to individuals, but instead provides resources to affected people and communities to support them in what they want to do with their lives. To this end, the Windrush Act will establish a Commonwealth Community Cohesion Fund for the development of projects in the UK and the Commonwealth to tackle disparities and to rebuild social and economic ties of communities damaged by the Windrush scandal and other historic unfair actions negatively impacting on this cohort." Anthony Brown says, "We're calling for a Windrush Act. Restitution. Since 1948, the citizenship of those who arrived on the Windrush and that of their descendants has been repeatedly eroded, particularly by the 1971 Immigration Act and by the current hostile environment. This erosion leaves many within the African and Caribbean cohort finding themselves British in all but name, and therefore having to prove their Britishness when it was Britain that eroded and undermined their Britishness in the first place. The Windrush Act fully restores the Britishness of this cohort." Anthony Brown says, "We're calling for a Windrush Act. Remembering. To this day, the United Kingdom prefers to tell the story about its colonial past that is often unrecognizable to those who lived that past. Only by telling a more honest story about its colonial past can the country show that its citizens of colonial descents are as worthy citizens as any other. The Windrush Act holds the state and its education system to do this more honest telling. The Windrush Act remembers what Great Britain meant to those pioneering men and women who saw the country a set of ideals and values that led them to board the SS Windrush in 1948. Anthony Brown says, "We're calling for a Windrush Act." Do I qualify for Windrush? You can apply if one of the following is true. You came to the United Kingdom from a Commonwealth country before 1973. Your parents or grandparents came to the United Kingdom from a Commonwealth country before 1973. You came to the United Kingdom from any country before the 31st of December 1988 and are now settled here. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. Remember, actions speak louder than words. The time for action is now. Translate our words into action. Contact WD Legal. Website www.wdlegal.co.uk. Together, we will make the difference. The Motivator Show. Success is ours for the taking. Good morning to you all. Was that good? Was that inspirational? Was that informative? Was it empowering? This is the Motivator Show. This is where we translate our words into action and where success is ours for the taking. Yes. Before I begin, and I know we're going into the show with a vibe this time, I want to give a big thumbs up to the management of Galaxy, .net. Oh yeah, you see the stars flying out of my head. Let's give praise and respect to the leader of Galaxy, .net. That's of course Nana Pakumba Bai. Yeah, 40 years of dedicated work to the community. A quick thumbs up, of course, to Giant King, who's taken us from night to day from Galaxy, .net. I hope you're all connecting well today. And of course, this show goes across many platforms these days, and we continue to extend the platform so we can maximize the audience. Maximizing audience means we're maximizing influence. To maximize influence means that we are able to assert ourselves across Britain, across Europe, the Caribbean, and of course, the motherland of Africa and beyond. That's what we intend to do. These messages are intended to find some aspect of yourself that relates to the key messages that motivates you to do well for yourself, your family, your friends, your network, your community. That's the purpose of these shows. And long may these continue. And long may these continue. If you want to communicate with the studio at any time, and if you're on YouTube or Facebook, you can send us messages through the messaging service. I may read them out, depends what they say. I see a thumbs up, and thank you for that thumbs up already. Long may that continue. But of course, this show goes across many platforms. Let me just put it on the screen. Of course, those of you on YouTube right now, we know you found us via the Motivator Show. Don't forget, after the show, put a thumbs up, make a comment, and the YouTube will help this show to be spread across the world. Those of you on Facebook, the same, under the Motivator Show. Tell others about it. Get them to link up with the Facebook page. We'll keep you informed what's happening within the show. And of course, GalaxyAffiliate.net, audio only, digital radio, 40 years. Another 40 years is coming. Mixcloud, of course, wonderful platform. If you're on Mixcloud, tell others you're now on Mixcloud. Tell them that's where you can find the Motivator Show. We're going out live now via Instagram. Long may that continue. That's the Motivator Show with an underscore between the Motivator and show. There you go. Long may this continue. Spread the word, and we will do you good. Don't you worry. Now, this show, of course, has a clear focus. We'll get to that soon about Windrush, the Windrush Act. We need a Windrush Act. Agreed? Do you agree? Thank you. I'm pleased you agree. Long may that continue. Now, there are a few public services announcements I want to make. A subject which is close to my heart and I know to your heart. That is, how do we take care of ourselves? Lifestyle messages are a crucial part of who we are as human beings. Doesn't matter your ethnicity, as human beings. And some of you will be aware that I'm an elected official, so I see the official figures. The official figures make for uncomfortable reading. And therefore, it is incumbent upon us to take responsibility for the quality of our lives. Yeah, it's incumbent upon us to take responsibility for the happiness in our lives. It is incumbent upon us to share good messages with those who we love, we respect, so they equally can have healthy, long lives. These messages are intended to raise the consciousness of what we can do to ensure we live long, healthy lives. So I'm going to go straight into it because we can have a really packed show. I'll give announcement and recognition to past contributors after my interview today. But right now, this is the priority, our lifestyle messages. And long may you absorb and take on board these messages. I ask you to consider the amount of sugar and salt that you consume every day. Mhm. Sugar, of course, is one of those ingredients in our diet that comes in many forms, and we love to give children sweets. Yep. Many of us develop the habit of adding sugar to our teas and coffees. Yep. Many of us drink those awful, I say awful nowadays, sweet canned drinks or bottled drinks. But actually, whilst it may give you some pleasure, actually, the potential long-term impact upon our general health and well-being can be quite catastrophic. There's a strong causal link between the overconsumption of sugar and diabetes that pervades the community. I mentioned at our last show that the British NHS spends more than £26 billion treating people with diabetes, yeah, where the pancreas doesn't secrete enough insulin to break down the sugar, so the sugar becomes toxic in our bodies. I urge you I urge you to think carefully about the amount of sugar that you consume every day. I no longer purchase sugar from the grocery store because there's ample sugar in the foods I already consume. I equally ask you to consider the amount of salt that you consume each day. Again, salt is one of those ingredients we add to the diet on the basis that it enhances the food. In some ways, it may well do so. It is the overconsumption of salt to which I've raised your consciousness. The problem here that we consume far too much of this salt. Salt, which is not the natural salt with all the minerals and so on. There's plain white salt, which is very popular in the grocery stores. Yes, purchase it, but you consume very small quantities per day. The problem is far too many consume far too much. There's a strong causal link between its hardening the arteries and the increase in pressure that builds up in our arteries, in our circulatory system. And many of you will recognize high blood pressure or hypertension. I know you recognize it. I know you recognize it. Again, a major health condition that pervades the community, and one, just like diabetes, that is actually avoidable. We need to be conscious of our actions and their consequences. So I ask you to consider the amount of sugar and salt that you consume each day. And if in doubt, please speak to a health professional, your doctor, your pharmacist. They are best placed to give you personalized health advice that's directly for you. I equally ask you to consider the amount of carbohydrates you consume each day. Carbohydrates, primarily in our case, are derived from wheat-based products, but there are some root vegetables which are a source. You see the pasta, you see the wheat on the screen now. You see the potatoes and the yam. And yes, I've mentioned the yam. And I say yam particularly because I'm of African heritage, right across our cuisines. Yeah? Yam plays a major feature in our cuisine. The problem here, particularly Africans in the West, who've got a whole range of other nutritional sources as well to call upon. It's the overconsumption of the yam and the potatoes that you'll see later on the effect it has on our bodies and, of course, our internal physiology. Yeah? That is the problem. Our bodies assume that we eat in the quantums we're eating because there's a rainy day. Famine is on the horizon. So you're stocking up. But actually, we've simply eaten too much. And we'll get to the appropriate amount per sitting in a moment. But I ask you to consider the amount of carbohydrates that you consume each day. The next area, of course, is, the fats. The fat is another one of these ingredients that is a problem. It's a fat, of course, primarily derived in our case from wheat-based products. Forgive me, from meat, of course. There you go. You see on the screen, you see the meat, you see the red flesh, and you see those white streaks. Those white streaks is fat. Yeah, it is fat. Many people use that fat to fry their food. Yep, more fat. Fat leads to cholesterol, and cholesterol leads to blockages in your arteries and your veins, and the consequences can be dire. I ask you to be careful and to consider the amount of fat that you consume each day. I recognize the challenges this presents for some people. I recognize it. But it's the amount of meat, it's the amount of fat that we consume each day. And if you haven't got a cholesterol meter, I encourage you to acquire one. Okay? Go to a doctor and ask the doctor to do that test for you. How much cholesterol do I have in my blood? And that will be a clear indication as to your vulnerability to the overconsumption of fat and the negative consequences it will have for your general health and well-being. And on screen, you see an example of a partially blocked arteries. You can see the red corpuscles, your blood trying to get past these blockages. Yeah, it's a combination, of course, of all those other ingredients, that are built up in your blood. And in doing so, building up in your blood, it has the consequence of restricting blood flow. Yep. So just for all of those, just to ensure you all understand, the interview will start at 8:45. Interview will start at 8:45. I need to go through the health and lifestyle messages first. There you go. It is so critical that you hear these messages. This is the internal consequence in the overconsumption of the ingredients which I've mentioned earlier on. It is something which is quite profound. I've had friends and family members succumb to the overconsumption of food and their consequences. And the last ingredient I want to bring to your attention is, of course, starch. Starch, of course, is one of those ingredients which you don't think about, but it's contained in our food, and particularly in rice. Yeah, and you see on the other screen those pretty foods, those cakes with a full jam packed full of starch. The problem with starch, our bodies assume you've got to store it and preparing for a rainy day. Yeah, and I know I've got to say this. Look, from the Caribbean and particularly from Jamaica, I recognize the rice and peas. Look, if you're from the motherland of Africa, particularly from West Africa, I recognize the jollof rice. I recognize it. The problem is not the plate, it's the quantum. That's the problem. That is the problem. And the buildup of starch in our bodies, has real life consequences, which I'll get onto in a moment. I simply ask you to consider the amount of starch that you're consuming each day. Okay? That's what I ask you to do. Gradual reduction. Speak to a health professional. Speak to your GP, your doctor, whoever has access to your medical records. They will provide you the personalized advice. And here you are, Here you have it on the screen. Partial impact of the overconsumption of the ingredients I've just mentioned. You see on the screen a man and a woman with bloated shoulders, bloated chest, bloated abdomens, bloated thighs, bloated buttocks or bottoms in other company. Yeah, this is the direct causal link between the overconsumption, yeah, of sugars, salts, the fats, yeah, the carbohydrates and the starch, yeah. Here is the physical manifestation of its impact. And internal to these two bodies are, of course, many health concerns. I simply ask you to consider this advice and seek out your own advice, yeah, from health professionals. These messages, if they are to have impact, it should affect your attitude to yourself and what you eat. You now see on the screen what the expert all universally recommend you should eat. They recommend that you should eat natural food, untainted food. You see on the screen, you see the oranges and you see the beetroot. You see the noriega and you see the apples, yeah? You see the cucumber and the tomatoes, yeah? You see the pineapple and the sweet corn, yeah? You see the melons and the lemons, yeah? You see the cabbages. This is the food that our bodies can grow. You see the noriega, you see the pumpkin seed, you see the avocados. This is what our bodies most desire, yeah? You see the onions, yeah? You see the beetroot. This is what our bodies desire. This is what we can grow our bodies with. You see the carrots, yeah? You see the cucumber, you see the cabbages. This is what our bodies need to grow. Untainted food. Food that comes out the ground, is fresh, and is able to nourish our bodies and take care of you. This is what our body is designed to consume. And I say to you, we need to eat far more of this untainted food. Yeah, you see the wonderful avocado, you see the bananas there. Yeah, you see the cabbages I've mentioned, the tomatoes, the sweet corn. You see the oranges, the onions, the beetroot. Yes, this is what our bodies crave. You see the wonderful grapes, the avocados. This is what our bodies crave. You see the melons. Yeah, you see the mangoes. You see the almond nuts. That is what our bodies most crave. This is what our bodies can protect you from all the managed diseases across the world. And of course, many of you recognize that we are around 70% water. Whilst the foods I've just mentioned are all contains ample amount of water, because we're very active creatures, we need some time to top up our water levels. You see the young man and woman topping up their water levels between 2 to 3 liters of water per day is what's recommended. It may vary depending upon your height and your mass, but water is life. Particularly hydrated water is life. And be assured, in order for all this to be meaningful, you must exercise. Exercise is life. I repeat, exercise is life. See a young lady, she's pumping her weight, she's focused, she knows this is what our bodies need to push those muscles, to use those muscles. See the mature gentleman, he's got his headphones in, he's running, he's smiling, he's pleasured. This is what's giving him vibe for his life. You see a young lady running up and down those stairs. I'm showing you, running up and down those stairs is truly an exercise in itself. I've tried it, and trust me, it does races your heart. But gradual build-up, not a sudden mad exercise up and down the stairs, a gradual build-up. And if in doubt, go to a personal trainer, go to a gym and get advice. You see the young man with his bulging muscles doing his press-up. He knows. This is doing him a world of good. Exercise for life. Exercise is good. And this complements your appropriate health diet. Yep. Appropriate diet is critical for all human beings, and plenty of exercise. This is what we need to live a long, healthy lifestyle. It is simple and it is achievable. Of course, these messages will be worthless unless you also take care of your mental and spiritual health. Your mental health, if in doubt, please seek out a health professional. If in doubt and you're not comfortable speaking immediately to a health professional, speak to whoever you most trust, you most love. Yep, you have the greatest confidence in. I suspect that person will give you the support you need to obtain the professional support that you actually are desiring. I urge you to seek out some advice if you feel there are doubts about your mental health. But of course, all human beings are truly spiritual beings. Yep, our mind, body, and soul gives us a sum total of who we are. I urge you, if in doubt, seek out your spiritual advisor, seek out opportunities for spiritual enhancement. I commend these messages to you. If in doubt, seek out your advisors. Praise be, praise be. And I hope those few minutes were worthwhile, but you understand why they are a crucial part, an essential part of these messages, these podcasts, these shows. Every strong, they are a crucial part. It is our responsibility as a community, not the professionals, not those leaders. It is our responsibility as a community to take care of self. Reparations begins with self. Those deliberate action to enhance our lives, to enhance our existence. Praise be, bless assuredly. Okay, now let's go to the next phase of the show. We've got around 15 minutes before we get into the main interview. It's truly going to be an exciting interview, I can assure you. What I want to do is give a few shout outs, I think, first of all. Now, many of you will recognize an organization for whom I've got the greatest respect for, and that is, of course, put on the screen, the National Association of Black Supplementary Schools, or NABS, if you like, okay, led by the inspired brother Nia, okay? And the purpose of this organization is to register the locations of our educational facilities, or indeed health facilities, if you like. It is primarily aimed at supporting young people, our children. Yeah, our children, not simply young people or the youth, our children. Okay, facilities created to support them. It could be a supplementary school. You may just call it an after-school project. Yep, you could call it a cultural center, or you could call it a religious and spiritual center. Whatever facility is set up to support the next generation and their development should be registered with the National Association of Black Supplementary Schools, so the parents who may want to take advantage of that facility and support that facility, therefore, can know where you are located. I commend the National Association of Black Supplementary Schools website to you, and the website address is www.nabss.org.uk, nabss.org.uk, or you can email the inspired brother Nia on info@nabss.org.uk, or call him directly on 07958 348 558. I commend this organization to you as one that is truly responsible, and it encourages us to work collectively. Remember, a family that works together grows together. I say it again, a family that works together grows together. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Okay, the next organisation I want to give a moment to, and I think it's important that I put them up on my screen. Oh yes, there we go. Let's go to Nina's first of all. Many of you be aware. Well, a regular feature of these podcasts, of course, these shows, is a focus on Nigeria, a country that must not fail, a country with incredible potential, a country could easily be the first African lion state, economic lion state. You know, you've got the Asian tiger economies. This will create African lion state, or lion economies, if you like, which are technologically advanced, yeah, where there's ample facilities, opportunities for young people to grow, constant electricity, constant gas, yeah, constant access to the internet, yeah, good public services, yeah, and the model example of how a nation should be created, should function. Nigeria has that potential. Many countries across the continent have the potential, but the size of Nigeria, it gives it a special place. An organization devoted to create peace so we can create wealth and prosperity for all is the NINAS organization. They work and seek to work collaboratively with all Nigerians. Okay, I commend the NINAS organization to you, and Ndidi, I hope you're there listening. Absolutely. Let's support the NINAS organization. And to speak to them directly, you can, of course, phone them in Nigeria and on the usual international code 234 912 1551, or you can email them info@ninasvoice.org, or go to their website, that's ninasvoice.org. I commend the NINAS organization, an organization that seeks to bring peace so we can create prosperity for all. And long may that continue. Long may that continue. And I know there's always some controversy in that country. I know that. But you know what? I'm going to put that aside. Work collaboratively. Work with a common aim and common purpose, regardless of your religious or ethnic origins. Yeah, work with a common aim and common purpose, and Nigeria will eventually be called truly great Nigeria, whatever guise, whatever form it takes. I'm convinced of that, and that's why these messages are being shared with you today. I want to now just go to a third organisation to whom I have the greatest respect for. And of course, a past contributor to this show is, of course, Dr. Carlton Brown. And he's the author of a number of books, but most certainly of a number of key events in the community. Yeah. A key event which is about to come up on the 9th of July is the UK Black Business Entrepreneurs Conference for 2024. If you wish to obtain tickets to go to that event, it will be a truly worthwhile occasion. It will be listening and engaging with international thought leaders, networking with professionals and businesses across several industries for knowledge sharing and inspiration. Receiving a copy of this renowned Black Entrepreneurs Report, which affected many local authorities across the country, including my own, gaining practical knowledge and skills through in-depth, well-researched seminars and talks when you go along to the event. Of course, 5-star catering and live performances from award-winning international artists. I commend the UK Black Business Entrepreneurs Conference for 2024. Go to Eventbrite to obtain your ticket. I commend that event to you. And of course, my last contribution here, and I did want to give, and it's in line with the theme for today's show, but I'm going to give it out anyway. You recall previous show, which I had a representative from the Birmingham and Liverpool Windrush Legal Advice Services. I commend them to you as being a sound organisation, providing sound advice and supporting the community. A community that works together grows together. I'm going to say it again. A community that works together grows together. They're based. The Windrush Legal Advice Clinic, they're on 58 Bank Street in the West Midlands. The postcode is WV148PD, or you can email them at info@windrushlegaladviceclinic.com, or phone directly on 01 902 382 542. I commend the Windrush Legal Advice Clinic. Wonderful people. I need to get them back again. Also, there was a number of cases they were pursuing. We useful to have an update. Useful to have an update. But well done. Well done to you all. Now then. This is interesting. I want to play a quick video. I've just given you examples for our lifestyle messages, which were critical. But often when the audience hear this, it's simply words. What I'm going to do is demonstrate to you that these aren't simply words. There are members of the community right across Britain, Europe, the Caribbean, and other places who will come together in common aim and common purpose, who understand how critical it is that we work together. Yeah, that we work together. So I'm going to play you a video of a group of Africans who have come together in common aim and common purpose with the purpose of promoting their health and well-being. Yeah? Let me put it on the screen and you tell me what you think about them. Are they not an example of what you should be doing if you're not doing it already, of course? Here we are. I commend to you the Countdown Organization.
Cheese. Famous. Hello, 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 hello. Awe. 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 You get one life on leave, me self get one life on leave. Why we no go use am gladdy and enjoy the time? Palava no dey finish, time me no dey wait nobody. Now why I dey try for always get am nice every day and night? This one way we all fend we safe, now nobody own. You want to eat with too much, we go down the belly, now you young. And the balance where you go die left, now all the money on. So why for the greedy you say for? Now the motor car where you let buy am. If you see finance where you call it bilam. Oh. You meet up woman where you let yanam. And if you let the man na for keep am. Want them more. The food where you feel for eat na for eat am. That fine la power where you let na for buy am. And tire more. And if you baby love you back love em. But if you love them all now you not for left em. Want them more. Cause nobody know waiting tomorrow all. So every day of my life till old, I fasting enjoyment stay go. Now for land for care for yourself. Nobody love you pass you yourself. All man they fed for himself. Oh. Now why I know they allowed with the other man they can't take me peace away. Me joy away, me smile away. Oh no, let nobody take the peace away. Me joy away, me smile away. Oh no, every day. I see they also work for the pay. They like Naboku on a small cage. Land for the loose body 110. No to money, no to gently. No money make not a man and bother. As long as you get waiting, you they eat. Land for the loose body 110. This one way we all fend we safe, now nobody own. You want to eat with too much, we go down the belly, now you young. And the balance where you go die left, now all the money on. So why for the greedy you say for? Now the motor car where you let buy am. If you see finance where you call it bilam. Oh. You meet up woman where you let yanam. And if you let the man na for keep am. Want them more. The food where you feel for eat na for eat am. That fine la power you let na for buy am. And tire more. And if you baby love you back love em. But if you love them all now you not for left em. Want them more. Cause nobody know waiting tomorrow all. So every day of my life till old, I fasting enjoyment stay go. Now for land for care for yourself. Nobody love you pass you yourself. All man they fed for himself. Oh. Now why I know they allowed with the other man they can't take me peace away. Me joy away, me smile away. Oh no make nobody take your peace away. Me joy away, me smile away. Oh no.
Well, they're sweating, right? Very good. Okay, huh? Wasn't that fantastic? A perfect example of collaborative economics, coming together, common aim and common purpose. They understand the importance of exercising, and it's more inspiring when you're doing with others, particularly those who share your ambition to keep fit. Yeah, to shed those pounds. Shed those kilos, those grams, if you like. Why not? Why not? I love them. They are an example of what we all need to do on a regular basis. Long may they continue their great works. All righty. What I want to do now is move to the main theme for today's show. That's, of course, to address the issue of Windrush, that dastardly experience that many are still going through as a result of the current government. You never know. I say current, let's see what happens after July 4th. Yeah? The current government creating a hostile environment inside the Home Office, and therefore effectively disenfranchising ordinary men and women, hard-working men and women, whose sole aim was to work hard and provide for their family and to be good citizens of Britain. Mhm. But their lives, far too many lives, have been tainted by actions which even the international community has seen as not simply being harsh, but as being heartless. I'm going to bring in a campaigner, himself a victorious Windrush campaigner. A victorious Windrush campaigner. Let's bring him in. This one, get him into the studio without any problem. It'd be nice, wouldn't it? There we go. Let's see. Let's make sure all is well. Here we go. Let's bring him in. Let's see. Oh, it worked. Oh, first time as well. Good morning, Anthony. Can you hear us all right?
I can hear you all right.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I just love that picture behind you. Is it sunrise or sunset? It looks very calming, huh?
It's a sunset.
Wow, very, very calming. And I know I've spoken to you at length on a number of occasions now. You have a calm, highly focused, determined personality. Oh, I have to say, I appreciate you. Okay, audience, I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I'm a fan. Anthony Brown. Okay. Thank you, first of all, for coming along today. I know that you've had a very intense week, so I appreciate that you are given the time today. But the messages we want to share today are so critical, so important to our community and the wider British society. They was right that you are here today. But before I get into the main meat of my interview, I'd like you please to introduce yourself. I know you very well, Anthony Brown, but you are a husband, a father, you are a campaigner, but you've got other interests in life as well. Just say a little bit about yourself to the audience so they can get to know you. Who is Anthony Brown? He laughed already. Come on, Anthony, go on.
So I'm the co-founder of Windrush Defenders legal community interest company.
Mm-hmm.
Founded it with 3 people. So that was Lorna Downer, Leonie Brown.
I'm going to encourage you to speak up, though, Anthony, with a bit of vigour in your voice. There you go.
So that was Leonie Brown, Lorna Downer, and myself in 2019. So the Windrush scandal broke in 2018, and after a year of supporting people voluntarily, we started Windrush Defenders Legal Community Interest Company. I'm also the chairman of Preston Windrush Generations and Descendants UK. Mm-hmm. So that's an organisation that's based obviously in Preston, mm-hmm. and we work there to support people with their Windrush claims and advocacy.
Which is where I met you, of course, with Preston.
Yes. So during the lockdown, we organised various platforms, free talk, to discuss some of the issues that were facing the community and the difficulties that were being experienced by people trying to claim compensation. And we'd written to Priti Patel, the then Home Secretary.
Infamous. Go ahead.
And we'd set out certain points that we thought she should address, because she'd invited us to the Home Office to discuss the compensation scheme, and she'd said that the scheme could be improved as we went along once we found that there were issues that needed addressing. So,
Forgive me, Anthony. I'm going to come to the compensation scheme in a moment. I'd like to just say a little bit about yourself, because you were caught up in this Windrush scandal yourself. Just give us your own testimony. What happened to you? I know the audience were very interested in this.
So I was born in Jamaica in 1960, and my dad soon after came to the UK. He came to study civil engineering and then got a job, literally rebuilding the country.
Yes,
and
yes.
Then saved enough money to send for all his family. So there were five of us, five children, and my mum, and we all came on a ship called the Ciosa Line.
Oh, Ciosa Line, not the Windrush, huh? It is curious, I actually came over on a plane, apparently. I was a baby, of course. So it is interesting how many actually came on the Windrush, but that's a symbol we would actually want to continue. Sorry, I interrupted.
So my brother tells me, because we were talking about it last night, and he's in the States at the moment, but he's coming over for the first time in 45 years or 50 years, thereabouts. So, so he was telling me that, on the ship, he and I used to creep into the first class section. Eat all the food at breakfast time.
I remember I can recall my own appetite being, I could not compare to these. Sorry, continue.
So the ship stopped at the Bahamas, and it stopped at Madeira and Lisbon, and then it docked at Southampton, where I met my dad for the first time.
Oh, wow, look at that.
And we travelled up from Southampton by train. The BBC were doing interviews of the passengers coming off the ships. And we were interviewed when we got off and on the train. I remember falling asleep and waking up and seeing the camera pointed at me.
Oh, dear.
But we got to Manchester and we settled at Duke Street in Old Trafford. Then went to school. I remember the colour becoming an issue, because people would say, "Are you blue or are you red?" And if you said the wrong thing, you could end up in a fight with the wrong sets of fans of Manchester City or Manchester United.
Yes.
But then obviously race came into it. But as three brothers, we defended ourselves. Moved on to school at Stretford Grammar, but then my dad decided to come back to Jamaica to work for 2 years on a contract to lecture at the College of Art, Science and Technology in Kingston. So the family went, and I didn't settle very well, because again, the boys at school, because now I spoke with an English accent, and I was wearing these bell-bottom flares, and
I remember them.
they said, "Why have we taken the windsacks from the airport and made trousers out of them?" So again, that got a fight, and it was difficult because they then said that we're English boy, and so the we were fighting on arrival there as well. So it made me understand that this issue about different people challenging people who appear to be new or different, it happens in all sorts of situations. But it also taught me that if you stick up for yourself, then sooner or later they understand that they've just got to deal with you.
Yes.
And some of the things when it happened in Stretford, where I lived, you then sorted it out between yourselves, had your fight, had your issues. But what used to happen, strangely, was we used to shake hands afterwards,
Yeah,
and
this is
so we didn't.
true.
We didn't find any racists. We just found opportunities to make friends with people because after the fight, that was it. So um, I wanted to come back to the UK because coming here at 6, you develop affinities, and I just wanted to come back and see my friends, my brother.
Mhm.
So eventually, after pining for quite a long time, my mum and dad allowed me to come back
Okay.
to my sister's wedding,
Okay.
and that was 2 years and 10 months after my dad had left because he'd extended his contract, and we didn't know that the immigration laws had changed because when we came, when my dad came, he came as a citizen of the United Kingdom and colonies, but
I've got
Jamaica
to
got
say
its.
on that point, but it's an important point to note. Up,
Mm,
that's of course you're referencing the 1948 Act. Is that right?
mm,
That
yes,
set out that under that act, um, all citizens within the Commonwealth were all equally citizens of the United Kingdom. Yeah,
and
isn't that
colonies.
yeah on the college? Yeah, so isn't that profound? That
Mm,
was the 1948 Act, and
mhm.
remained in force up until what date? What changed it? What the point?
What changed it was the British Nationality Act 1981.
Hmm. Okay.
So
Well, we're
that
going to come
changed.
back to that. So let's hold that thought there. I just want you just to continue to relate your experience. 'Cause of course,
Mm,
you come back. You didn't know the laws has changed. What happened
mm.
to you? What happened to you?
So when I got back, there's still a quirk in the education system in that um, although Jamaica and most of the Caribbean were under, you know, British administration, we had to do O levels that was set by London.
Yes,
When we came to England, those O levels are not recognised in
it is
England,
curious, huh? Yes,
and they're still not.
indeed.
And you have to do your O levels again. So I went to college, did my O levels again, then did my A levels,
Mhm.
and then wanted to go on to university. And that was when the problem started,
Oh,
because the college said that I was being treated as an overseas student, and wrote to the Home Office, and they wrote back to say, yes, and you're an illegal immigrant.
gosh.
So,
You've been here for how long by that time?
but for since returning about 4 years.
Wow. Okay. And there was a
So,
yeah. Go ahead.
um, so although I had grown up uh, believing that I was British and just the same as anybody else,
Mhm.
now we're being told that I needed to report to Manchester Airport to be deported. So of course that was a complete shock. My brother said he felt as though he'd had a limb cut off,
Yeah.
and we went to our neighbours. They didn't know what this was about. Talked to people from school.
Mhm.
Nobody knew, but there were these campaigns about people being deported at the time, but they tended more to be Asian people. And we went to the community centre, and they said that they would help. They told us to go to the law centre, so we went to a law centre on Stockport Road, and there was a lawyer called Steve Cohen, and he um, took up the case and said that we would need to have a campaign. So the um, community centres organised a campaign and anti-deportation campaign.
Right.
And don't know if you know Gus John,
Oh
but
yes,
Professor
of course.
John at the
The
time
professor now, of course. Yeah.
yes, was at the time an activist, and he had a centre called the 8411 Centre.
Yes.
So we went along there, and he formed a committee with all various people who decided that I was going nowhere, and they organised demonstrations, letter writing campaigns, television, petitions, and they said that I should go and see my MP. And there was a man in the community at the time called Whit Stennett. He's now been a mayor of Trafford, because we lived in Trafford at the time, and he and Ozzie Smith from the Jamaica Society in Manchester took me to see my MP, which was none other than the grandson of Winston Churchill.
Oh,
Winston Churchill, and he listened to the case and said that he thought it was complete nonsense and he would write. He wrote as well, but it was some time after the campaigning and so on that we got a letter back from David Waddington, the immigration minister at the time. And this was under Margaret Thatcher, who had come to power, saying that we were being swamped by immigrants and that, she was going to be very harsh about it. Yes. But, with all the support, the government relented and it allowed me to stay on compassionate grounds.
Interesting, huh? It's useful to better understand those circumstances, because your experience was experienced by many thousands. What I worry about are the cases who were repatriated without a campaign such as yours. And we know that there are still thousands in the Caribbean who were deported illegally.
That's right.
Yeah. The bulk of those, particularly in the Caribbean, in the previous 20 years, were actually encouraged to come here by the British government under the 1948 Act on the premise that Britain needed workers following the war. That was the commitment. And I must say, as I read through and study this subject, the slap in the face, the barefacedness of some of these politicians, I must say, I find it quite disgusting. Can I now just take you further? So you've given a recital of your own experience. So you were a victim, but now a victorious winner in relation to the Windrush position. Can I just ask you? So clearly you were born when Jamaica was a colony of Britain. Yep.
That's right.
Therefore, you were born British.
Correct.
Right. You came to Britain, okay? And you lived in Britain for a period, and then your parents took you back to Jamaica, and then you came back to Britain after how many years was that? How many years?
Well, 2 years and 10 months was the first time I came back after my parents had taken me in 1973.
Right, okay. Now, what I'm trying to understand is why is it possible for the Home Office to get the interpretation of the law incorrect? Oh, forgive me. I realize I've got a call on the line. I'm not taking calls just yet, caller. Can I ask you to call back in about 30 minutes' time? Thank you. They're gone now. How is it possible for trained public servants to misinterpret the legislation that applies to you? It does appear to happen, if I may say so, quite frequently. What's going on, do you think? What is going on?
Well, in administration, they've got a saying, isn't it, that it's either a cock-up or a conspiracy. And we don't know, because in my situation, the Immigration Act 1973 protects Commonwealth citizens, Section 212. If you're not subject to those rules, you can still keep your status.
Yes.
But it also says that if you've been out of the country for more than 2 years, you can lose your indefinite leave to remain.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I should have been protected from that, but the Home Office ignored their own rules and just decided to threaten me with deportation. And it's happened with, the government says, 164 cases that they could find. So
Only
Amber Rudd,
164, huh?
that's been up to 2002, they could find 164 cases where they said that they deported people illegally who were actually British.
Yes.
Before 2002, we don't know how many have been sent back, because during the 70s and 80s, there was this issue about voluntary um, repatriation. You taking the opportunity to return to your country and getting a certain amount of money to go, and we don't know how many people were forced out on that basis, or the ones who were put on planes and taken. We remember the story of Joy Gardner, who was
Yes,
killed
that's
by
right.
immigration officers.
That's right. That's right.
A Jamaican woman uh, who they wanted to deport, and they put tape over her face and
Right.
all sorts. So there was some really harsh approaches to immigration, and we don't know the numbers of people that were taken and forced out. But how the law works is that when Jamaica became independent, the government passed the Jamaican Independence Act. So
Yes.
that's an act of parliament that says that after the 6th of August, if you're born in Jamaica or your father's born in Jamaica, you become a Jamaican. So even though you are living here in the United Kingdom, and you've come on the Windrush or the Ciosa line, and you've now settled here, suddenly Parliament passes a law, and you are now a different nationality from your neighbours,
Yes.
and they don't tell you about it. So you're there cheering Jamaican independence, not knowing that you are now subject to immigration law, because immigration law only applies to foreigners.
Right.
It doesn't apply to British people. And
Yes.
so those people now have become foreigners in their own country,
Can you imagine?
because
Yes.
Britain is their country. You say that people came here to fight during the war. It goes back much further than that, because remember, it was Oliver Cromwell that sent the English Navy to seize Jamaica from the Spanish in
History.
1655.
Yes.
So for over 300 years, they'd been had Jamaica as part of the empire, and we played in blood to for the wealth of the empire. So it was more our country, and there was we had every right to be here, but the government
It's an important point.
changed
Yes.
legislations, and then created all these barriers for people accessing what they had built up over centuries. So all the schools, all the
Yes.
economies, all the businesses,
Yes.
there was no more freedom of movement, and
Yes.
nobody said, "Oh, there's a divorce bill, and we're going to pay you so much for the contributions that you've made over the century." It was just a case of barriers up and exclusions or deportations.
I think you make a really good point, and I recall, of course, in 2000 when Professor Gus John declined the CBE, and he
Mm,
made it clear to the monarch, the then government, and society that, of course, to accept that particular goal would go against his lifetime work
mm,
to work against empire and all that it stands for. But of
mm,
course, it demeans so many people. So I want to give a big thumbs up to Professor Gus Johns, and I look forward to hosting him here at some point and having that wider discussion. What I want to do now, then, Anthony, is really address the issue of the proposed Windrush Act, but I want to work towards it. Okay, reciting your experience. Okay, we've highlighted a few of the acts, but I just want to start with the 1948 Act. Why is it such an important act, first of all? Why is it important, first of all? If I can ask you to respond to that question.
Well, it's an important act because at the time there were a number of countries becoming independent. So you had India that was becoming independent, South Africa, Canada, Australia, and Britain was saying, well, we need our own nationality, because until then there were what we call British subjects. Now, a subject is someone who swears allegiance to the king. So you will see in Parliament they still have vestiges of that, where before an MP can take his seat, he has to swear allegiance to the king and his heirs and successors. They still do that in the Jamaican Parliament and many parliaments.
So this is Jamaica's good as well. Anyway.
So this is why they are subjects. But the British Nationality Act 1948 created citizens, and it made that declaration that all those people were now citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies, and it gave them the same rights as people who lived in Britain.
Right, indeed. You and I were born British. Yeah, we're both from Jamaica. We were born British. Okay, I think it's important to note. And let's just take that further now. Now that we've made that declaration, let's now move on to what should happen next. The changes in the legislation, started, if I recall, in 1971, 72. Is that right?
Well, it started with the Independence Acts, as I say. With Jamaica, that was 62, but there was others before. So the African country, Ghana, I think it was 58. But each time a country became independent, then the people born in that country became citizens of that country, and they ceased to be citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies. So gradually, all the Caribbean islands, for example, Trinidad came after Jamaica, then Barbados, and so on. So it would be changing for different groups of people over the 60s and the 70s, and so that's why sometimes there's quite a bit of confusion as to who is affected and who isn't. Some of the islands have different arrangements, like for instance Antigua. You could still retain your British citizenship even though you became an Antiguan. So they shouldn't have had the problems that other Caribbean islanders had under the immigration rules. And then there was a Commonwealth Citizens Act, a Commonwealth Act that can't remember the name of it, but it was 1962 that started to restrict people, that they had to show that they had work opportunities, and then there's an Immigration Act in 68, and then the main one, the one that got me, was the 1971 Act. So I have an issue with that act.
Right. Okay. And can I just ask you, just to clarify the underlying premise of that act, just to help the audience understand, in highlighting it, why it's a significant act of Parliament?
So that one said that if you'd been out of the country for more than 2 years, then you would lose your indefinite leave to remain. It also gave all the people who were from the Caribbean or from other Commonwealth countries indefinite leave to remain.
Oh,
So,
right. Okay.
although they'd lost their citizenship of the United Kingdom and colonies,
Mhm.
they still had the legal rights, or that act gave them the status to live in the country legally.
Right. Okay. And that's an important point to note, and thank you for that. Uh,
Hmm.
and and if I may, then, just to make sure, so you have men and women who've come to this country to work
Hmm.
hard, and we're most certainly hard workers. Okay, and they have children. How are the
Hmm.
children affected at this point? In that case, how are the children affected?
So the children would be once they were born here, up until 1983,
Hmm.
they would be British.
They'll be British. Say that
Mm.
again. But I know that there are a number of persons I spoke to yesterday who were children of so-called Windrush generation, and they
Mm.
were unsure. So I need you to say this again and explain why they are British.
Um, well, the 1981 British Nationality Act changed it so that um, if they were born here, they had to register, and uh, otherwise they wouldn't automatically be British.
Hmm.
So what's happened? I don't know if you remember Preston. With Preston Windrush, there was Sakina
Yes,
and
I
her
do. I do remember her.
Lynette.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
So with her case,
Yes.
which was in the papers, Sakina was a 12-year-old at school
Right,
and wanted to go on a school trip to France. And
right. I remember.
her mum applied for a British passport, but then was told that she wasn't British, even though Sakina Lynette was born here and Sakina was born here, her mum.
Wow.
So, but her mum had been born after 1983.
Okay.
And the reason she wasn't British was that her grandmother had come from, I think it was St. Vincent, and St. Vincent's had got its independence after her grandmother had come here, but her grandmother never knew, like ourselves, like
Mm,
myself,
right.
that that affected her status and didn't register.
Wow.
So
Yes.
it travels down the line. And
Yes.
of course, it was a big shock for the family. But we managed to, make the applications, and now that's been resolved.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it's because of the new laws that come into place that changes how you can show that you have the legal status to live in the country. And then roll
Yes.
forward to 2014,
Hmm.
and again, that's another act we have issues with, because
Theresa
that,
May. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
that then says that unless you have documents
Hmm.
to show you have the legal right to live in the country, you can't access the NHS, you can't access employment, you can't get a driver's license, you can't get a bank account. So if you remember, there was this place in France called Sangatte when you saw people jumping on the back of lorries trying to come
Indeed.
through,
Indeed.
and the
Yeah.
government thought it was a good idea to legislate so that if those people were in the country, they couldn't access any services and so on, and that might be a deterrent. Well, that's what they said anyway.
Hmm.
Um, but it caught people
Hmm.
who were living here quite legally
Yes.
under the 1971 Immigration Act, which gave them indefinite leave to remain, but it didn't give them any documents to say that
Indeed. Yeah.
they had, they had indefinite leave to remain. And when
Mhm.
the government changed the law again to say you need to produce documents,
Mhm.
they didn't have any. And this is where people ended up in detention.
Yes.
People had lived here for 50, 60
Graceful.
years,
Graceful. Yes.
and some were deported. Um, many lost their jobs, and it was Amelia Gentleman that broke the scandal in 2018 when the Commonwealth Heads of Government meetings was taking place in London. And I saw Caribbean heads of government going into Downing Street and receiving an apology from Theresa May. And I'm thinking, what? The British government never apologises for anything. This must be serious. Anyway, I took notice because, these stories that were coming out, I was thinking, well, that could have been me. And so, because I'd never gone anywhere near the Home Office since then, since I was threatened with deportation, never wrote to them again, never tried to get citizenship or anything. I thought, well, I'll just stay under the radar. And Prime Minister Holness held a town hall in London, and a friend of mine.
And forgive me, and just for the audience, so Prime Minister Holness was, of course, the Jamaican Prime Minister. Okay.
That's right. He was the Jamaican Prime Minister. And a friend of mine said, we need to go down and find out what's happening. Yeah. So we went down, we listened to what he had to say. And he was saying that, he met with Theresa May and she was going to put a scheme in place. And, we should be able to get our documents. And obviously I was still a bit skeptical because I thought if we ring them and, they found out where we are, will we find a van home office van inside to drag us out? Can we trust them? So we went back stage afterwards and, we met him and, I specifically asked him if this was safe. And he said, look, the Jamaican government will be monitoring this situation. So, we're assured that, it's not a trick, that, they're going to resolve this. So I rang up the next day because I knew that, I fell into that category where I didn't have the documents. And they started to ask all these questions again, because one of the things that people were saying is that they kept on asking you for school records, which this was 40 years on. When am I going to get school records? The school's been knocked down. And so there were people who were looking for records and documents and so on. So I just said, look, this is not something that I can engage with. And at that time, they were looking to give people biometric cards. But, I made the point that, I was British, and when you're ready to talk to me about British citizenship, you've got my number. and so I didn't go for this biometric card thing because I thought it was like sticking a yellow star on you like they did with the Jews to mark you out as somehow, somebody separate. So
that's one way of describing it, isn't it? I understand why you say that. Yeah.
So I didn't accept that at all. And a few weeks after, they rang up and said that they brought in the Windrush scheme and that we could apply. We were having meetings in the communities, so all over the country, people were going to meetings to find out what was going on and how they could get something done. I was asked to speak at the meeting in Manchester because people knew of my situation and what had happened before. I asked at the beginning of my talk, is there anybody here who's been affected by the Windrush scandal? And nobody put their hands up. So I thought, do you know what? I think that they're scared because I can remember how frightened I was. It took me about 10 years to get over that shock. When
if I may, Anthony, at this point, I think that's a really important point to highlight. That I'm aware, even in my own borough, of persons who fall into this category, but they do not trust or they perceive to be a truly racist Home Office official. Who ask ridiculous questions, and you just highlighted one. Please, can you prove that you went to school 40 or 50 years ago? Knowing quite well that's nigh on impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Has the Home Office sought to change that impression of them? I know we've got James Cleverly, who's currently the Home Office the Secretary, but just before him, we had another successor to Priti Patel. We had Suella Braverman, who was in the
Mm-hmm.
same guise as Patel, as well as the others. But have they sought to change that impression of them? Or is it that they don't care and have not sought to change?
It's been a long journey with the
Mm,
Home Office,
okay.
and as I said, that there were various meetings taking place around the country, and I
Mm,
was part of the one in Manchester. But out of those meetings came different groups. So in Manchester we had Windrush Defenders, but
yes.
then in other places, we've got Preston Windrush, we've got organisations in London, but the Home Office invited us down to London, and
Yeah.
I remember Glenda saying to me, you're the chair of Preston Windrush, you need to come along. I said,
Who's Glenda? Just for the record,
Glenda.
I know Glenda. I know who Glenda is, but just for the record, who is Glenda?
Glenda Andrew, she's the friend of Sakina. So they
Mm-hmm.
started Preston Windrush because they came over to Manchester to see how they could get help for Sakina's daughter. And then they decided they wanted to form an organisation as well
Can I
and
just
asked me.
say, if I may, just say, hi, Glenda. If you're watching, my thumbs up to you. In fact, let me do this for you. Yeah, and there you are. You see the stars coming out of my head for you, Glenda. Long may you continue your great works. Continue,
Mm,
Anthony.
yeah.
Continue. Yeah.
So Glenda said they'll play our train fare. So I said, Glenda, the last time they wanted to pay my fare anywhere was to deport me. She said,
You
"Stop it."
can't trust them, huh? I know. I know.
She said, "Stop it, you're going."
Yeah.
So anyway, we went along, and again, they told us that they wanted to listen to us. They wanted to work with us to iron out whatever difficulties there were with the scheme. But it's been a long journey. They didn't uh, respond to some of the recommendations we made, as I was saying earlier, about the letter to Priti Patel. But I was telling you about the people at Manchester. When I asked them to
Yes.
put their hands up, they didn't, and I thought they would be afraid. So I told them my story as to what had happened to me,
Mhm.
and that we could work on it together. Because
Yes.
then I hadn't made an application either.
Mhm.
So then after that, I asked again, is anybody here impacted? And then 6 people put their hands up. I
Absolutely.
thought.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I said, let's meet afterwards. And then, they got a bit of confidence because I realized, because back in, when I was being threatened with deportation, I realized what helped me was all, the community rallying around and having
Absolutely right.
people
Yes.
support. So, if you did it on your own, you're terrified.
Yes.
And so this is what we decided to do. So I then became like the person with the experience to rally people and have meetings. And we reached out for lawyers. When I was wanted to go to university, I wanted to study law.
Mhm.
But then when I was threatened with deportation, I was very disillusioned, felt, that I didn't belong,
Indeed.
and I
Yeah.
didn't go.
Mhm.
And it was years afterwards that I thought, oh, I haven't got it out of my system. I haven't gone. And it was in 2012 that I decided that I'd go and do the Open University course in law.
Mhm.
And just as I graduated in 2018, the Windrush scandal broke. And so I thought that the universe had been telling me something all along. So I threw my energies into the Windrush scheme, and I've still been working within that. But we reached out for other lawyers at that time,
Mhm.
and some responded, and we formed a group. And this is where we formed Windrush Defenders Legal. Um, but the Home Office, as I say, we wrote to them to say, look, we've been getting people in our surgeries, and although they meet the criteria, supposedly meet the criteria from what the government had said, because they made what was called the Windrush Statement, and that's a very important statement by Amber Rudd, saying that if people had gone abroad, they could come back and get their documents, and people here could get their documents and so on. But we were finding that although we were assisting people with applications, they were still being rejected. And so we wrote down all the issues and wrote down our recommendations as to how we thought it could be resolved. And she wrote back a very nice letter saying that she was grateful for all the work that we've been doing, but they would continue to do the work that continue to work in the way that they were. So we felt this was irrational because if if you're doing something and it's not doing what you say it's going to do, and you say you're just going to continue with it, we thought that the courts should have a look at this.
Absolutely.
So having graduated, my first case was to take the Home Office to court. So Preston Windrush rallied round because we didn't have any money to do that, and we did a whip round, and we got a barrister to help us prepare the letter before action, and I called the Home Office and found the person that was inviting us to London all the time, and said that we're taking you to court. And he said, "What? Are you threatening us?" I said, "No, we are taking you to court, and that's not a threat. And I just need to know the Home Secretary's address to send the letters to."
Good for you. Good for you. Yeah.
So we put the Home Office in the dock, and we had our day in court.
Mm-hmm. And what happened?
Oh, well, they came up with a cute defense. So our lawyers told us that, which is Charles Russell Speechley. So we, as I say, didn't have any money, but we thought we would fight anyway, because that's how I'd grown up. If there was a situation where there was a challenge, you'd fight, no matter how big they were. So the Home Office made no difference; they were still going to get a fight. And so, but you'd always hope for help, and that help came from Charles Russell Speechley.
Okay.
And they were a large law firm. They employ about 500 lawyers.
Yes. Yes.
And they decided to come behind us because they wanted to support the cause. Right. And so they took over, all the preparations of statements and documents and all the rest of it, which was like tens of thousands of pounds worth of work.
Yes.
And they rolled the Home Office rolled out their biggest lawyer. So you remember when Boris Johnson wanted to prorogue Parliament, and Gina Miller took him to court.
Oh yes, I remember. Yes.
Okay, so she was an inspiration for me as well. So I thought, get the government into court like Gina Miller did. So they brought out Sir James Eadie, who was the top barrister for the government, to defend him against Gina Miller. And my lawyers, Charles Russell Speechley, said they must be very worried because they're bringing out Sir James Eadie on your case, and it's not usual. And their argument was that for a judicial review, you have to ask. You can't ask for something that you'd already got, and they were saying that because
say that again, because it's many would have never passed it by. Explain what you mean by that.
So their legal argument, because they were talking about something called standing, whether or not you have the right to bring the case. Yeah. So they were saying that because the Home Office had given me my citizenship back, I didn't have the right to take them to court.
Okay.
And but we argued that I had an interest because of all the work that I was doing. Absolutely. Anyway, the judge on the day decided that we did have the right, and that he was happy that the Home Office hadn't pursued the argument that they were pursuing.
Mm-hmm.
So we overcame that hurdle,
Mm-hmm.
but we were refused permission on the first assessment of the papers because that's what happens at first. But then we asked for an oral hearing, and that's when it was only supposed to last half an hour,
Okay.
but
It lasted how long?
it lasted all day
Oh my
because
gosh. That's
just
important, huh? Yeah.
Justice Fordham was very thorough, and I was told that he was one of the top constitutional experts, and I think he made it his business to take on the case because my lawyers were ill on the day, and it had to be adjourned, and it could have gone to another judge. But he checked his diaries and found a day where he could have the hearing, and everybody
Okay.
agreed to come back on that day. And he was very thorough. It was really at that stage
Mhm.
that I understood what it was to be British,
Indeed.
because here was I, just a citizen. In a judicial review, you are asking the Queen to
In
come and
effect,
look at
yes.
one of
The
their
monarch. Yep. Yep.
look at what her government is doing,
Indeed.
and then she appoints a judge to come and act on her behalf. And if you notice in the courts, you have the royal crest,
Indeed.
and when people
Yes.
leave the court, they're bowing, but it's not to the judge, it's to the royal crest.
Yes.
So he's there to represent the Queen, who is there to deliver justice and the law. And so that's when I understood what it was when they talked about the majesty of the law, because here was one of the most powerful departments of state, the Home Office,
Yes.
and they had to come and give an account
Yes.
to a citizen
Yes.
about what they'd been doing.
Yes.
And I thought that was just
Outstanding. Outstanding.
huge, and all and we had quite a number of the people from the community, and just to see the courts in action, really grilling the Home Office, going through what it was, why it was that these cases weren't going through, and
Indeed.
all the different
And
things
what
that
was
had
their
happened.
explanation, Anthony? What was their explanation why they were not going through?
Well, it was all about the law that the government had passed, primary legislation, and they were saying that they appreciated that there were problems.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, under the 1981 British Nationality Act, you have what's called Schedule 1, and in that it sets out certain criteria before people can apply for naturalization.
Mm-hmm.
So there were two clauses, Clause 6, which dealt with foreigners who wanted to naturalize,
Mm-hmm.
and Clause 7 for people who were British in all but legal status who could register.
Right.
But Clause 7 had been repealed in 1988, 5 years after the law had come into effect. And that
Okay. Can I
left
can I
only.
can I just stop there? 'Cause that's another important junction point. Um, Under the 1948 Act, those of
Mhm.
us who were born British simply needed to register. That's right.
That's right. When we came to the UK, we simply needed to register.
There you go. Now, and that's the issue here for
Mm.
many of my parents' generation. How many actually registered or knew they needed who
Not
they were?
many.
Didn't know
Not
they
many.
had to register.
No, no.
Yes, they were born British, but they needed to
Mhm.
register in Britain in order to
Mhm.
avoid all the kerfuffle we know with many have experienced. Okay,
Mhm.
and that's an
Mhm.
important junction point. 1988 was the important junction point. What
Mhm.
I'm going to do, if I may, I'm just conscious of time, and I want to make sure I know, if I may, just quickly turn the direction of this to focus now solely on the proposed Windrush Act. And I've gone through your papers, and the key points are recognition of poverty, reparations, restitution, and remembering as the underlying principles. Can I ask you just to speak to those underlying principles, and then state what impact the Act would have in relation
Mhm.
to what we discussed thus far, and hopefully help the future government, which I hope will not be the government we have today, to look at this seriously and therefore take the next step, which is, of course, to enact the Windrush Act. Please explain. What are the underlying principles, and then explain the impact those principles will have on those of us affected by the Windrush experience?
Okay, so as I was saying, the Schedule 1 of the British Nationality Act lays down certain criteria, and there were
Mm-hmm.
two clauses: one registration, one naturalisation. So the registration one was repealed. A lot of people who came here as citizens, they didn't register, and so the only way open to them now was naturalisation. And was making the case in court that you can't naturalise British people
Precisely,
because
precisely,
both are
yes.
naturalised foreigners. But that schedule said that if you'd been out of the country for more than 5 years, then sorry, if you'd to apply for naturalisation, you had to be in the country for 5 years. Now, those people who had been locked out or been deported and then returned to the country, they couldn't get their citizenship back because the law said that they had to be in the country 5 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
again, that had to go. Then also with naturalisation, you have to be of good character.
Mm-hmm.
Over 40 years, with the sus laws and everything, a
Indeed.
lot of people had got criminal records.
Mm-hmm.
Again, so that, we were having people who were refused on that basis. And then there was another clause that said you had to intend to make Britain your home. Now, how they determine that is how long, if you've been away from the country or if you had close ties. Now, what they call close ties, if you own property and so on, people would be thinking, oh, it's family you got, but that doesn't really come into it too much. And so there were all these hurdles that Schedule 1 um, sort of put in the way. Now, what we were saying with the Windrush Act, it should be, or what we'd recommended to Priti Patel was that we should make it so that people could still have their status as citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies, or that should be restored. And then there was a clause in the British Nationality Act 1981 that could then convert that to British citizenship.
Okay.
That was one way, and but obviously she decided not to do that. But what the Home Office lawyers undertook with the courts when we had our hearing, they told the judge that the government was bringing forward the Nationality and Borders Act 1922. So again, there's been a big debate about that act because they were talking
Yeah.
about Clause 9
Indeed,
and
yes.
being of dual nationality and having your citizenship taken away without notice and so on. A lot of people might have missed that, but the other aspect to that bill was that it gave the Home Secretary discretion so that she could not take into account that they had to be in the country 5 years
Mm-hmm.
and so on. But the cases that we've been putting forward since, we haven't seen any exercise of that discretion. And we had our concerns that
Yes. Okay.
somebody like Suella Braverman would not be
Would never
exercising
do it. Would never do it.
a favor.
And we
So
try
we,
not to be political here. We try not to be
yeah,
political. But the
yeah,
fact is that up until at least James Cleverly, the past Home Secretaries have all been extreme right-wing flavours of the Conservative Party,
yeah,
and individuals who have no regard for people's liberty, it does appear, and are happy to trample them when it suits them. I
exactly.
find the situation quite shocking. Sorry, go ahead.
So this is why we weren't happy with this. Okay, it was a step in the right direction, giving discretion, because that was the basis on which I had been allowed to stay. It was under
Indeed.
discretion,
Yes.
but then discretion had been removed from the law. But
Yeah.
now that we're bringing it back, and
Back
I
again.
thought,
Yeah.
okay, let's see how this goes, because we weren't comfortable with it being up to a Home Secretary that could be very, very harsh. We want it written into statute. So this is where the Windrush Act comes in and says, look, we've seen the discretion bit. We're not really too enamored with that. We want it written into statute. So that's part of what the Windrush Act does. And then there's other clauses that will protect future generations. So what that does is that it creates an opportunity for groups to sort of monitor what's going on, because we thought we had MPs in Parliament that would stick up for us when they were
Absolutely.
doing all these changes, but that didn't cut much mustard, and they passed these laws and people ended up in detention and people dying in the streets and so on.
Mhm.
So we don't want that again. So we want to protect future generations, and there is a number of amendments to laws that are already in place.
Mhm.
So we have something in place called the Windrush Compensation Expenditure Act.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
in order for 2020, so in order for the government to pay out the compensation, they had to pass a law that allows the Home Office to draw down on claims that are made.
Mhm.
So that money is coming directly from the Treasury. There isn't a pot that says Windrush on it. And
Okay.
so the government estimated that it would take like 200 million to 500 million
Wow.
to
Okay.
pay the compensation to the people that could have been affected. So far, the scheme has paid out about 80 million,
Oh my
and
gosh.
the scheme was
That's
supposed
all is paid
to.
out. Oh, for
Mm,
heaven's sake. Sorry,
so
go ahead,
so
please.
so
Yes.
so that this was supposed to be a 2-year scheme. It's now been on about 5 years, and they say that they're not going to end it. It's going to continue because there's lots of people who haven't come forward, myself being one of them,
Mhm, mhm.
because, as I was saying, it was a very traumatic experience, and a lot of things happened in your life, and to start to unpick that, you better have a few therapists around you,
Yes.
because I was concerned that it put me into waters where
Can
I'd
I just
find it
ask you
very.
to pause there? Because, of course,
Mm,
what you're now reciting is the fact that
mm.
you are still and naturally emotionally scarred by that experience. And even though you are
Oh,
particularly well informed, even you
yes,
remain hesitant in coming forward on the
definitely,
scheme.
definitely.
Okay. And what I
Yeah,
want to do
and
is, if I may, and I want to tackle this, because this is one of these psychological phenomena that pervades our community. One reason why I do these podcasts. It is really
mhm,
important that the legislation is
mhm,
turning in our direction. Okay,
mm,
and if I've read the notes correctly, Anthony, I've learned this that does the Windrush Act and compensation scheme applies to you? Now, I understand there's three criteria. You came to UK from a Commonwealth country before
mhm,
1973, or
mm,
your parents or grandparents came to UK from a Commonwealth country before 1973, or you came to UK from any country before the 31st of December 1988, and you're now settled here. So
that's
those
right.
are the three primary criteria. That's correct?
Yes.
Good, good.
Yes, and
Go ahead.
that's very important, because a lot of people have been told, "Oh, you can get compensation if you've been discriminated against, or if you had struggles in the Caribbean and you were
Mhm,
left behind, and so on." The criteria that the Home Office sets is that you would have had to have trouble with showing that you had the legal status,
mhm,
and then that's when they would pay out compensation. So if you just had registered for British citizenship but suffered all those discriminations at work and so on, they wouldn't compensate for discrimination at work or
mhm,
discrimination in other areas.
mhm.
It's just only if you couldn't get your documents, you couldn't get your job, or you lost your job, or you were deported because you didn't have the right documents, then they would compensate you.
I understand you. And that's really, really important. So we're clear
Mhm.
now who can apply, okay,
Yeah.
and there are levels of protection for those who have not yet come forward to protect
Mm.
you from in further injustice by the Home Office. Okay,
Yes,
this
that's
is
right.
why I want to emphasise to the audience. This is why elections are meaningful. Now,
Yeah.
in the hope that we have a new government with a new attitude, more compassionate attitude in relation to this subject, and I'm assuring that will be the case. And I'll declare, being a Labour councillor myself, I'm
Mhm.
assured that is the case. It's important then to note then that it's important for people to come forward. Okay, I'm just conscious of time, so what I want to do, if I may, I want to really focus on your practice and how the audience can contact you. Okay,
Mhm.
just explain how they can contact you if they want to have a discussion and require support to make their application to regularize their stay and where
Mhm.
they've been unlawfully with they've had not the access to NHS, couldn't gain work, couldn't gain properties, how they can gain that support from yourself. How do they contact you, Anthony, and what support can you give to them?
Mhm. So we have a website.
Mhm.
It's WDLegal. That's .co.uk.
Yep.
Or I'll give you my mobile number: oh
Oh, sure.
seven
Okay. Okay. I did not anticipate that, but go ahead. Yeah.
07
Yep.
392
Mhm.
399 040.
In fact, what
And
I'm
you
going to do, I'm going to put on the screen. Um,
Mhm.
There you go. You see on the screen, audience, and those who are audio, I do apologize, you can't see this. You can see the email address, the
Mhm.
team at wdlegal.co.uk. Again, the team at wdlegal at .co.uk. And you see there's one of these QR codes. If you view this online, if you select that QR code, that will take you to the relevant website, and you therefore access to Anthony and the enormous experience and professional experience he possesses. Okay,
Mhm.
wonderful. Can I? The act itself, as outlined by yourself, sounds perfectly reasonable to me. Okay, um, lobbying. Have you engaged in lobbying thus far with either of the two major parties to secure the Windrush Act?
We have. We've been lobbying our MPs in the North.
Mhm.
And so that's Lucy Powell, who is
Okay,
the MP for Manchester Central.
okay,
Kate Green, she's now left Parliament.
indeed.
And Diane Abbott came down to Manchester. We lobbied
Yep.
her.
Mhm.
Afzal Khan.
Mhm.
Um, uh, we've also lobbied some Conservatives, Sir
Mhm.
Peter Bottomley, Sir Robert Buckland.
Mhm.
Um, so we have been lobbying, but most important of all, we've been working with the Home Office. Now
Okay.
we had a journey after putting them in the dock. I was on a radio for interview, and the minister at the time, I was opposing this recommendation from the Home Affairs Select Committee, and they were saying that the scheme needs to be taken away from the Home Office.
Indeed.
And I was saying that didn't make any sense
Okay.
because it's just going to create another layer of bureaucracy. Because I was aware of what it had taken to get hundreds of people together to then create the department that then was going to manage the scheme. It's a lot of work, and it took about a year for them to
Mhm.
get up and running.
I see.
And then all the teething problems. So it's 2 years before you start to even do any proper work.
Okay.
And so that'd be a huge. But then you
Mhm.
still have to, when you're going to pay compensation, check the immigration status of the
Yes.
person and who
Go back
does
to
the
the Home Office, in
immigration
other
status
words. Go
at
back to
the
the Home
Home
Office.
Office.
Okay.
So you're not going to get anywhere with that.
I'm just conscious of
Very.
time now, Anthony. So we're kind of pressed for time. So you're working with the Home Office. They've assisted you in put together some of these statutes, some of the
No, they have
clauses
not
that go.
assisted at all. What we've done is we've sat down and
Mhm,
we've discussed our concerns, and we've made recommendations
mhm.
about the policies that we say the Home Office needs to adopt in order to make the scheme better.
Okay, okay, okay.
And
That's internal
we
operational
made some
matters.
cases, yes,
Yes.
and
Okay.
they're looking at that and working with us on that. But above that as well, we're
Okay.
saying now that there needs to be legislation as well, and
Okay.
we want to amend the scheme so that the compensation scheme can go to organisations as well as individuals,
Hmm.
and so our organisation is voluntary, and all the ones around the country is voluntary. The Home Office has its own agency that's helping people,
Hmm.
but we feel that we're more effective because we're more rooted in the community. So amending the scheme so that that those organisations can be funded out of that money, and also address other disparities that have taken place in the community. Say, for example, with criminal justice, with education, with health, it's all harmed our community, and the Home Office accepts that serious harm has been done. So we're saying that that harm can be addressed through the scheme as well.
And I wonder, and thank you for that, 'cause that's useful to understand that internal dialogue you've had with Home Office officials, the very same Home Office who've refused the majority of applications and continue to do so. But it's okay, it's okay. I'm interested
Mm.
particularly because we're in we're running up to a general election. This is an ideal time to get this issue under the nose of those politicians who will have the powers to decide. Okay. Have
Mm.
you written, for example, to Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, for example?
No, I've not written to Keir Starmer, but the chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee at the time, um, can't remember her name now,
Okay.
but I wrote to them,
Hmm.
and I've written to David Lammy, and as I say, Diane Abbott has been involved, but she's
Okay.
not part of the bench anymore,
Right.
and Dawn Butler,
Okay.
we've lobbied
Okay.
her,
Yes.
uh,
Okay.
Ribere.
I'm going to encourage you in that case, because this is the right time. It's such an
Mm,
important issue, one that will, for the, let me again declare, I'm a Labour councillor myself, so let's make it clear. I am very confident that the leadership of my own party will be very interested to ameliorate the distress that has been caused by this current government's treatment
mm,
of people of African, Caribbean, and African origins who have suffered the misfortune of the Home Office hostile environment. And I'm confident when I say, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the party, but I can speak to the party. I'm confident that they would not wish the current state of affairs to continue. So I'm going to work with you on this one. I'm going to, and first of all, encourage you to write to
mhm.
the leader of the party, to the leader of the Labour Party, and the entire shadow front bench. Most certainly, you should write to the shadow Home Secretary, whose name is eluding me right now. It will come to me in a moment. Okay,
Is it David
I'm
Lammy?
sorry.
Is it David Lammy?
No, it's not David Lammy. But either way, it will come to me in a moment. I'm confident that this is a subject that my own party would wish to take up and would wish to address the wrongs that have been done to our community, so that even someone as capable as yourself will feel confident in going
Mm.
forward, particularly with the compensation scheme. Because if you're not going forward, why should others? You see, because you're the expert. If you're not going for, why should others?
Yeah.
But so
Well.
we've got to lead by example, and display the confidence that we are able not only
Mm.
to voice our opinions and perspectives to those who could decide, but those who decide will listen. It's the
Yeah.
lack of listening, I believe, is the problem here. Go ahead.
And this is it. So in my situation, it's just an individual situation with
Mhm.
the traumas that I've had. But I understand, in our surgeries that, you know, there are other people who know about it and who don't want to go forward either. And so I understand, and we are going to do it, but we just need to feel that people are listening, and that, you know, we've got the right support around us when we do it.
Yes.
With regards to writing to Keir Starmer, yes. Because I don't share the view that it's all the Home Office. My view is that it's really Parliament that we have to look to. This is what we found out when we went to court, that you know, it's actually Parliament that made these laws, and the Home Office just enforces them. So if we want changes, then of course we've got to have new legislation. And all the time, Parliament's been going along how they support Windrush and so on, but they haven't made any new laws to undo, you know, the ones that they did before. And this is what we need to see now. So we've been working with the Home Office staff. When we went on Radio 4, the minister invited us to go to the Home Office and to look at the operations, and we met them, and we found that they didn't have two heads. There were people from, you know, the community just like us, and we sat down and we talked with them. We invited them to our centre, and they came, and we gave them lunch, and they gave us lunch, and we've been working together.
We're running out of time now, Anthony.
So what I'm saying is now it's all eyes are on Parliament and the new if there's a new government, but it's always got to be that we look to Parliament and our representatives, and the Home Office is just a tool, really.
We are going to work together, and we're going to promote the Windrush Act. It's a common sense step forward to resolving the wrongs of the past, so that no longer will members of the community feel intimidated or hesitant in pushing forward to seek their just compensation, or indeed to recognise their stay here in Britain. Many have been here for 50, 60 or more years. It is now high time for change. Anthony Brown, you've been an outstanding guest. I'm almost out of time now. Thank you for sharing those few moments with us. But you'll be back again, because we're going to work together to ensure that the Windrush Act becomes an act of Parliament that is ascended and signed by the monarch. We will work together on this particular venture. Is that agreed?
That's agreed. Happy to work with you.
There you are. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. You've been an outstanding guest, full of information. Be encouraged by audience. This is what we can do when we work together in common aim and common purpose. Anthony Brown, thank you very much. Good day to you. Give our regards to your wife and family. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Wow. Wasn't that something? And before I go, I did want to play this apology that was given by the Prime Minister, then Prime Minister Theresa May. Listen to what she said. Let's see if I can get this right. Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and leader of the Conservative Party from 2016 to 2019. Listen to the Prime Ministerial apology. Or maybe I'm not going to listen to it. Next time, maybe. Never mind. It's been a truly inspirational podcast, inspirational show. It is expected that for each of these shows, an action will follow. Please make contact with Anthony. He would love to hear from you. If you are affected by Windrush, if you're in doubt, if you're unsure about your status, please reach out to him. He has been through the experience. He is a safe pair of hands. Do not suffer in silence. And I say to anyone out there who is in doubt, please be in no doubt. We must make changes. And it's important that you not be intimidated by a bureaucracy. But in fact, what you recognize is that you're doing it not for yourself, but you're doing this for your children's children. So, until the next time, I remain the motivator. This is where we translate our words into action, and where success is ours for the taking. The Motivator Show. the internet's most inspirational podcast. Every Saturday morning from 8 to 10 a.m. Anthony Brown's story. In the summer of 1982, Anthony Brown, then 21, was hoping for an acceptance letter for a place to study law in London. He'd worked hard for his A-levels in computing, maths, physics at North Trafford College in Manchester and was full of energy and idealism. Instead, he received a letter from the Home Office telling him he was in the UK illegally and needed to report to Manchester Airport for deportation. Brown, who was born in Jamaica but moved to England as aged 6 years old in 1967, had been classified as an immigration offender. Anthony Brown's story. Many people in Brown's position were repatriated, but his case was taken up by a group of campaigners who were determined to prevent his removal from the United Kingdom, launching what became known as the Anthony Brown Anti-Deportation Campaign. Professor Gus John, then a community activist and now an academic and an equalities campaigner, helped coordinate it. Professor Gus John said, "The system was barbaric." Professor Gus John, he said, "I had declined the 2000 New Year's Honours List award." He said, "Because everything I've done in my life in this country since 1964 has been in the struggle for racial equality and social justice. One of the major impediments to promoting racial equality is the legacy of empire. I believe the whole thing is iniquitous. People think I am being cheerless campaigning against the empire, but I am struggling to end the injustice and inequality that the whole damn thing is built upon." At a recent lecture, he noted, "All empires sustain themselves and expand through barbarism, and the British Empire is no exception. Imperialism and colonialism serves to define the nation and its people's view of themselves and their place in the world. It was a crucible, therefore, in which racism is constructed." The 1948 British Nationality Act, 6C56, it was an act of Parliament of the United Kingdom on British nationality law, which defined British nationality by creating the status of citizens of the United Kingdom and colonies, CUKC, as the sole national citizenship of the United Kingdom and all of its colonies. It gave people from colonies the right to live and work in Britain. The government needed workers to help fill post-war labour shortages and rebuild the economy. Caribbean countries were also struggling economically, and job vacancies in UK offered an opportunity for all. Anthony Brown says, "We're calling for a Windrush Act. There comes a point where we need to stop just putting people out of the river. We need to go upstream and find out why they're falling in." Desmond Tutu. Anthony Brown says, "We're calling for a Windrush Act." The then Prime Minister Theresa May apologised to the Caribbean heads of government for the treatment of Windrush citizens and promised that no one would be deported. The then Prime Minister told the meeting with Caribbean leaders she wanted to dispel any impression that her government was, in some case, clamping down on Commonwealth citizens, particularly those from the Caribbean. "I'd taken this issue very seriously," the Home Secretary apologised in the House of Commons yesterday for any anxiety caused. "And I want to apologise to you today because we are genuinely sorry for any anxiety that has been caused," she said.
On Tuesday, I met with Caribbean leaders, where I gave an absolute commitment that the UK government will do whatever it takes, including where appropriate payment of compensation, to resolve the anxieties and problems which some of the Windrush generation have suffered. These people are British, they are part of us, they helped to build Britain, and we are all the stronger for their contributions.
Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. The Windrush Act will have at its core a recognition, apology, reparations, restitutions, remembering. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. Recognition by the United Kingdom that its past actions have unfairly impacted on peoples of African Caribbean descent, both living in the UK and in its former colonies. It is a recognition that this impact has consequences across all aspects of people's lives: citizenship, community cohesion, education, criminal justice, work, health. The Windrush Act places the duty on public bodies to reduce race disparity for outcomes in their work, as exposed by the government's own race disparities audit. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. Apology for the wrongs that were done historically by the United Kingdom to people of African Caribbean descent. These wrongs are clearly defined in the Wendy Williams Lessons Learned Review, and it is to the righting of these wrongs that the Windrush Act is addressed. This is not to say that there are not similar wrongs done to other cohorts of people that needs to be addressed by similar legislation. This apology is enacted in law so that it is clearly an apology from the nation, rather from some here today, gone tomorrow politician. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. Reparation for past wrongs. The reparation that it seeks is to work with those who are today living with the consequences of those past wrongs. It is reparation that go beyond mere financial compensation to individuals, but instead provides resources to affected people and communities to support them in what they want to do with their lives. To this end, the Windrush Act will establish a Commonwealth Community Cohesion Fund for the development of projects in the UK and the Commonwealth to tackle disparities and to rebuild social and economic ties of communities damaged by the Windrush scandal and other historic unfair actions negatively impacting on this cohort. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. Restitution. Since 1948, the citizenship of those who arrived on the Windrush and that of their descendants has been repeatedly eroded, particularly by the 1971 Immigration Act and by the current hostile environment. This erosion leaves many within the African and Caribbean cohort finding themselves British in all but name, and therefore having to prove their Britishness when it was Britain that eroded and undermined their Britishness in the first place. The Windrush Act fully restores the Britishness of this cohort. Anthony Brown says, we're calling for a Windrush Act. Remembering. To this day, the United Kingdom prefers to tell the story about its colonial past that is often unrecognisable to those who lived that past. Only by telling a more honest story about its colonial past can the country show that its citizens of colonial descents are as worthy citizens as any other. The Windrush Act holds the state and its education system to do this more honest telling. The Windrush Act remembers what Great Britain meant to those pioneering men and women who saw the country a set of ideals and values that led them to board the SS Windrush in 1948. Anthony Brown says, "We're calling for a Windrush Act." Do I qualify for Windrush? You can apply if one of the following is true. You came to the United Kingdom from a Commonwealth country before 1973. Your parents or grandparents came to the United Kingdom from a Commonwealth country before 1973. You came to the United Kingdom from any country before the 31st of December 1988 and are now settled here. Anthony Brown says, "We're calling for a Windrush Act." Remember, actions speak louder than words. The time for action is now. Translate our words into action. Contact WD Legal. Website www.wdlegal.co.uk. Together, we will make the difference. The Motivator Show. Success is ours for the taking. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's free. Press the like button and don't forget to leave a comment. Follow us on Facebook. Give us the thumbs up and share with your family and friends. We are also on Instagram and TikTok. Follow us there too. You can listen to us on galaxy@fui.net and also Mixcloud too.